porcupine, he was too wide, so I had to take a split and take the centerpiece out. I separated the head and handled that separately. Had to resize the length and the width of that head, so I cut those into two separate pieces. Back together. Had to shorten the arms on the front arms a little bit, and now we're trying to get him back to the right width. Based on what I'm seeing here, I'm thinking he's going to fit pretty good. Here's the rough. Nothing's in the ears, the eyes, nothing's been set yet. Just getting him sized, making sure every area is going to meet when I go to stitch him back together. Some areas I'm going to use a super glue because it's very fragile around these feet. So, and it's starting to shred. So I'm going to use that super glue to kind of tack it in place where I don't think that a stitch is going to hold. Stitching, get the eyes ready, set, a little clay in this nose where we're going to tuck. We'll tuck these lips, fill in some of these holes here with critter clay. Alright. Stitch a couple holes on this ear with some very thin, very fine monofilament. So when I go to set my Bondo in there, I'm not going to have it leaking through there. So I have a knot in the end of this, and then I just kind of pull it back until it catches that knot. I'm going to make another half hitch around that. The stitches should be pretty close. I'm not, it's not an area that's like very critical for perfection when it comes. Some areas you really want to make sure you're stitching nice and neat and spaced evenly. This portion here is going to be covered under an under fur. It's not going to be seen. So, but I'm taking some stitches a little deeper to make sure that this is going to hold. But again, it's not an area that I suppose the perfectionist couldn't do it any other way, but I love to strive for excellence, but perfection is something that nobody's going to get to. That's just going to lead to frustration. Try not to catch that fur in there, best I can. This particular mount is for the Forest Service. We've done a number of animals for them. Lots of species that the average person can't actually get a hold of. Alright, that is done. Just putting some clay in that foot, and I'm going to grab some glue for the hide paste that allows, I'm just going to kind of dip it in there, paste a little bit so I've got some stick on there. I'm going to slide that in there, make sure that the foot is in the direction that I want. And I'm putting this foot on first And then as I slide the head on, I'm going to then reattach the leg. It's easier for me to stitch this right now. So pull this up to the elbow like that, and then we'll just stitch it up. And so that's what I'm going to start doing now. The first thing I want to do is take a little bit of this glue again, and I want to put it on the underside. What I don't want to do is get the glue near my stitching, because then it gets all gunky and starts coming through onto the fur. So I just want it to stick on that other side. I'm going to have enough torque from the stitches to be able to be pretty safe with it staying in place. Here. So I'm going to put a pin right there. Let me bring this up. Pin there. Two things I'm going to be doing. I'm going to use this pin, and I'm going to take just a little bit of that, and I'm going to put on the end of that stitch, because I don't want that to come through, and this will help. That super glue helps to hold that knot there from pulling out. Alright, the other thing I'm going to do is put some super glue on. There's this edge of this whole entire piece here, because it's I won't be able to stitch it very well. So I put the super glue on there all the way actually up to my stitch. And then I'm going to glue it right down to the form right there. So I'm going to hold that there for a second and get that to stay. And I got a little bit of glue left here. I want to put this under the actual the front edge of that pad. Okay, I'm holding that down so it'll set. And get my optivisor on. I'm going to start my stitching now. So. So both legs are in.
and I am with the mold, and I'm going to reattach those as soon as I slide the body back in. And you can see what I mean when you look at how these guys have taken his arms off here, and I'll reposition them. Sometimes you would ask, well, why couldn't you just skin it like that and just turn it inside out? The problem is that porcupines are not easy. They're very stiff on the back because of all the quills, and so there's no super easy way to go at it. You just have to do a standard split inside the legs and down the center. You don't want to do a dorsal cut on which means down the back on a porcupine, because you're going to be fighting the quills the whole time, and that is not friendly. So they have to be handled in a special way and carefully. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring these two stitches in the center together and bring the body together where my incision was made here. I'm going to bring these right here. That will allow me to then be able to stitch this up as soon as I slide the body in there. So I'm noticing I have a little tear here, so I've got to figure out how to deal with that. See if I slide that up. I think I'll come back and deal with that. So I'm just going to keep stitching this up. These, by the way, have to be done in what we call a wet tan. It's not our standard. We generally send deer heads and things in, and then they dry tan them, and we have to re-soak them. Because of the quills, they don't go through all that process afterwards. They do a wet tan and send it to us. Just a lot easier than having to try and re-soak a porcupine and deal with all the quills, and then have the chance of more quills coming out. You lose a lot of quills in the process of doing one of these. But it still looks very nice when it's done. And you don't have to see all the quills for the porcupine to look beautiful. A very interesting creature. Okay, I'm back to my center here. I'm going to tie this off. And this here will be my starting point when I come back to stitch up the center. I want to make sure that this stitch is very tight, because it's going to get a little torque when I start putting the hide or the body back in. So I want to go over this a couple of times here and make sure this is secure.
So what we have now is porcupine with the head here, and I've got the 2 feet that are attached inside. I've brought the seams together so these will look nice and neat. It's very difficult sometimes to stitch underneath this area. You can't see, and sometimes you sacrifice quality. So we're going to do this method, and that way I can get the seams nice and tight on the legs without any problem. Make sure they come together in the middle. So there's going to be a little bit of a tight squeeze in trying to get those arms back in, but we'll muscle them in there. I'm going to begin now by going back to my body, because now I have to prep my head. Because once this is in there, I can't go back and do much with them. So clear my area a little bit. So I have to make sure that my lip slot is ready, and I got this nose area just kind of, I'm going to freestyle this nose with clay. What I mean by that is that I'm going to have to kind of sculpt it back in, because I'm not using an artificial one. There's fur that goes right up to the, all the way around the outside, and I may have to bring this forward a little bit. So I'm going to just put some clay in there and set those eyes. These eyes are on wire. So their eyes looks like this, and they're on wire. There's different ways. There's also, I can show you some other eyes here real quick. Here is a badger that I'll be mounting a little bit. But the eyes on this one, I'm going to be trying these a little bit different. And these are a bubble eye, and they look a little different. But they can be used for these types. You just have to, it's all preference. I like my eyes to be very stationary when I'm working with them. So these have little round bubbles. You don't want to drop them or they'll crack. They're like glass blown. And then these you would actually take and drill a hole and use a Dremel tool and round them out and push them in there. So you got full, complete, almost 360-degree round. Okay, so I'm going to try those with the badger, but not on this one. Just push the eye in there. Now, I have to look at the depth. This one here feels like it went too deep to me. So the way I remedy that is I'll have to put a little clay in there. So I'm going to just drop a little bit of clay underneath this eye, and then see if I can't float it in a little bit better the way I want it. Oops. One thing about eyes on wire is if those wires aren't straight, you're going to get them going in cockeyed, and they're not going to be, no pun intended. Alright, that's about what I want. So now I'm going to take my clay and I'm going to put a roll up, real thin line, and I'm going to put it around this guy. Most of this sculpting I'm going to come back in and do it with the eyelid, but I just want to make sure I get this blended in there. I'll do the same thing with the other side. So we're back to stitching again but we're on the back feet. And so I'm going to take off some thread here, and I'm going to be using a combination of thread and glue because this foot is a little bit shredded, and that happens sometimes in the tanning process because they're very tender and they get tumbled through things, and it's just the way it is. So the miracle work starts here. We have to put them back together. So I'm going to start with my stitch. If I can see this. I'm going to put a little glue now. Right here. On that. And around the edge here. Okay. I'm going to use this here. Bring this in. I'll hold my glue there and hold that toe in place until that sets. Super glue is pretty cool stuff. A lot of stuff you can use. This is Tech Bond. There's Zappa Gap, which works great. Most of these can be ordered online or from various stores. I'm even seeing them in fabric stores now from time to time. It's pretty cool, since my wife is a
My wife deals with quilts and sewing on a regular basis. So we go to these shows and I see this stuff all around, but yeah. Okay. Going to work this thread up because this looks pretty secure right here. I'm going to take my first stitch, so I'm down to my last stitch here in the belly and I'm clipping that off, and I'm going to run a little brush down through here to clean him up. Try to loosen up some of that fur that I might have missed. Got caught on in the seam while stitching. Now I went in and before I sewed this up, I took some of this hide paste and went down inside the hole and ran around. Now what I got to do is manipulate that as I push this around using a tool to help me with it. So I'm just going to first of all make sure that we don't have any wrinkles where they don't belong. So I'm coming in here like this on the shoulders, and this is where taxidermy gets its name, from taxing or moving the skin around on the form. And I can feel the glue in there, so I'm just going to kind of massage it in there and move it over the seam. So I put it off on the sides. I'm going to bring all kinds of existing, you want to use the mold to your advantage, the form, because it's already got the muscle tone in. I'm just going to push that in there. Make sure the legs are in tight down through here. This belly nice against the form, feels good. And so I'm just going to then brush it out a little more here. I have a break in this one foot. Not a terrible break, it's just I can see the clay coming out from around right here. So after I get all done, I'm going to come in there and clean that up with some water, and then I'm going to glue that down and patch that. It was just very tender, it couldn't take a stitch there, so that you don't even want to try. It won't work. I haven't pushed too much around this. I may have to manipulate this a little bit, so I want to be careful in my jaw area that I don't get that out of place. So, all right. So, I got here Mr. Porcupine. Ouch. Roll him over this side a little bit here. I'm going to push the skin. Be careful on these porcupines, they will get you. I'm just checking for everything to be on the form where it's supposed to be, around the shoulder. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill some holes in a board that I have, and I'm going to get him mounted on there. From there, I will be able to finish the tail and work on that head, and then get him groomed and finished for drying. This is the drying block. I'm just putting so I can finish the mount, get it adjusted, but this is by no means the its final resting place. It will actually be on a nice finished base. Alright, so we got it on there and got it secure, and that's what we want right there, so we can work with it. This gets a little tricky because this tail is very spiny, and the fur, so-called fur, likes to get caught up in the stitch. I'm going to use a baseball stitch on this, which means I come from the underside in and under and up, and I'm least likely to catch fur that way and have less fits with this, so coming underneath. Let's see if I can move this light a little better. So I'm going to come up underneath and I just catch the edge, the skin. I've got a curved needle here to make it a little easier to get in there. I just have to kind of lift on the thread as I go around here and pull it away with the end of my needle. This is very, very spiny and very, very sharp. Okay. And we're going to put some glue in there. Alright, now the best thing I think is then to just pinch that closed. Give that a second. And then we're going to put our attention to the head. Alright, so we're down to the home stretch here. I want to put some clay in this nose. Make sure I have plenty of it up in there. May have to adjust a little bit as I go along. Tucking tools here. So I'm going to, if I can't lock that down and loosen this a little so I can I have quite a bit. Finding the corner. Mouth had a little bit of damage from this. Was a roadkill. I'm assuming it was a roadkill. Some of the bumps I'm seeing on it. What I want to do now is focus on this lower jaw here. Make sure I'm lining this up just right. So I'm going to pull this forward. Bring that in there. Push a little there. Get it. Try and get it anchored. And then I need a little pin just to make sure it doesn't move while I work on the sides here. Okay. trimming off excess material so I can easily tuck it in there. Again, watching where my hands are so I don't mash that nose down. Looking nice there. So what I'm doing is just kind of working those spines out a little bit and let gravity work with us. See, he's upside down to help that gravity just kind of pull on that fur so it kind of stands up a little bit. Tell the fur is standing up pretty good, and this is because he's been hanging upside down. We've allowed gravity to kind of grab that fur and hold it in place while it sets. It's done a pretty good job. Again, this is just still in the drying stage. We haven't finished him yet.